Tucked away in the Himalayas, the lush, vibrant town of Manali is a sanctuary for travelers. With its bright green valleys and calm atmosphere, it looks like the perfect place to escape reality. But journey just a few hours higher and the greenery dies off, replaced by the freezing, desolate expanse of Rotong Pass. In the local Tibetan language, the word Rotong translates directly to pile of corpses. The geography up here is so hostile that local authorities enforce a strict, non-negotiable rule. Every single visitor must clear the pass and be heading down the mountain by 6 p.m. No exceptions. If you ask the police why people who break this curfew end up dead, they'll point to the extreme cold, sudden fogs, and hypothermia. But if you ask the locals who lock their doors at sundown, they blame the deaths on a predatory phantom shadow that hunts along the winding roads. In this specific geography, physical boundaries and curfews dictate the narrow margin for survival. That brings us to Sahil and his 3 friends. They booked a getaway to Manali for a very specific reason. They needed to outrun a recent tragedy. Take a look at this conceptual graph tracking a person's psychological baseline. Sahil's friend Samai recently lost his younger brother in a violent traffic accident during a school trip. That trauma creates a massive, sudden drop in mental resilience, leaving a dangerous opening we can call a vulnerability void. Desperate to cheer Samai up, the group drove up to Roteng Pass, but caught up in the distraction of the trip, they confidently ignored the hotel receptionist's frantic warnings about the 6 p.m. curfew. By the time they started their descent, the sun had vanished. Within minutes, an unnaturally dense fog rolled in and swallowed the road completely. Missing the curfew was certainly a mistake. But carrying this shattered, grieving psyche into a location known for its aggressive supernatural activity provided the exact catalyst the mountain was waiting for. Isolated in the freezing dark, they crept forward at a crawling 30 kilometers an hour. The visibility was essentially zero. One wrong turn meant plunging into a ravine. Then the headlights caught something out of place. Sitting on a stone milestone that read Manali 28 kilometers was a lone figure. He was shivering in the freezing cold, wearing only a dhoti, a traditional Indian men's garment wrapped around the waist and legs. Sahil saw him, but kept quiet. They drove forward for 20 solid minutes without turning, but as the fog parted again, the headlights illuminated the exact same stone. Manali 28 kilometers. This split 4-quadrant schematic illustrates what happens next. The group experienced a perception fracture. When they argued about what was sitting on that second stone, Sahil confirmed he saw the man in the dhoti. But Chirag swore he saw a little girl holding a toy. Arun insisted it was a massive black horse staring them down. Then they looked at Same. He didn't see an object at all. Instead, he was stuck in a trance, repeating over and over that someone out in the dark desperately needed their help. The entity was actively scanning the occupants, testing different projections to find the specific psychological entry point that would compromise them. On the third spatial loop, the Manali 28-kilometer milestone appeared again. Only this time, the stone was entirely empty. The entity was done observing. A shadow emerged from the fog. It was a 15-year-old boy, covered in mud and severe lacerations. And even though Arun accelerated to 40 kilometers an hour, the bruised boy was pacing right alongside the car, gliding forward without running. The entity had found its target. It discarded the old man, the little girl, and the horse. It manifested as a battered victim of a vehicle collision to perfectly mirror the tragic, unresolved death of Samai's younger brother. The strategy worked flawlessly. Operating entirely on hijacked empathy, Samai reached out, unlocked the central control over Arun's screams, and rolled his window down into the freezing night. As the car sped away, Sahil looked in the rearview mirror. The battered boy was standing in the fog, slowly waving goodbye. Sahil turned around to see Samai staring out the open window, smiling and waving right back. The most lethal predatory forces don't need supernatural strength to break through a barrier. They study the host, put on the mask of an unhealed wound, and let the victim open the door from the inside. Miraculously, the fog lifted. They reached their hotel in Manali just before 2 a.m., locked the door, and collapsed into bed, convinced they had outrun the mountain. An hour and a half later, Sahil woke up to a strange noise. Across the dimly lit room, Samay was out of bed. He was staring deeply into the vanity mirror, giggling with the clumsy, innocent mannerisms of a small child. As Sahil got closer, the physical violence of the attack became visible. Deep, dark choke marks were fully formed across Samay's neck, pressing in on both sides, as if invisible hands were currently strangling him. Smiling at his own reflection through red eyes, Samay began to sing a chilling childhood lullaby. He asked if they would let him in again if he knocked on their window, and then violently collapsed to the floor. Driving past the geographic boundary of the valley offered them zero protection. Once a parasitic force successfully attaches itself to a human host, the haunting becomes entirely mobile. At dawn, they dragged Samay to a local pandit, a Hindu priest and spiritual healer. Before Sahil could even explain the terrifying drive, the pandit looked at Samay and immediately diagnosed the true nature of the affliction. The pandit initiated a severe traditional cleansing ritual. As the prayers peaked, Samay convulsed, and a thick, unnatural black liquid violently purged from his stomach onto the floor. The pandit explained that the entity was an opportunistic parasite. It specifically exploited the recent death of Samay's brother to bypass his mental defenses and take up residence within his grief. The physical extraction worked, and Samay returned to normal. However, the psychological scarring is completely permanent. Sahil still wakes up in the middle of the night, haunted by that lullaby's memory. Unresolved trauma creates a dangerous vacuum. Unhealed psychological wounds act as open beacons for the predatory forces waiting in the dark.